So on page 229, they have solved 4 quadratic equations. And off to the side, because you have a column off to the side, I want you to put down number 1, 2 roots, part A, two rational roots. And then beside the bullet right here, you can put an A with a circle so that you know that that counts with that A. Maybe you put a 1 as well. This is 1A. It has 2 rational roots. When you plug it into the quadratic formula, the b squared minus 4ac is a perfect square. If you want to highlight that in the example where that shows up, it's right here. We simplified the b squared minus 4ac, we get 16. 16 is a perfect square. That means you can take the square root of it and get 4. And then because you have 2 plus 4 and 2 minus 4, both of those answers will be rational numbers. Okay? Anytime that you get 2 rational roots, it means your original question, if you had wanted to, would have been a lot faster if you would have factored it. X and x, 3 and 1, minus 3 plus 1, so x is equal to 3, and x is equal to negative 1. How much faster is that than the quadratic formula? A lot faster. Anytime you have a perfect square inside, you're like, oh, I could have factored. I could have done this faster. So that is 1A. This is still 1 with 2 roots. This is B, 2 irrational roots. What has to happen to get 2 irrational roots is your final answer has a square root in it. When does that happen? That happens when the b squared minus 4ac, the part that's inside your square root, is still a positive number, but not a perfect square. And we can highlight it right here. The inside of the square root, the b squared minus 4ac equals 8. It's not a perfect square, so we won't be able to just get rid of the square root. And our final answer has a square root in it. We still have 2 answers because we're still adding the square root of 8 and minusing the square root of 8, which gives us 2 answers. Sometimes questions won't care if they're rational or irrational. They'll just say, how many roots does this equation have? And so with the 2 roots, if we want to summarize when are we going to have 2 roots, whether they're irrational or rational, it's if the b squared minus 4ac is bigger than 0. In other words, anytime you have a positive number inside your square root, you're going to get 2 answers, because you're going to add it once and you're going to subtract it once, and you'll get 2 different answers. Second type. Oh, on this last one, beside this bullet, you might want to put 1b beside that bullet so that you know that that bullet matches up with 2 roots and b 2 irrational roots. The next bullet that we have Number 2, 1 root. So beside this bullet, you just have to write a 2. X squared minus 2x plus 1. If the inside of your square root, or the b squared minus 4ac, is equal to 0, then you're only going to have one answer. Because you'll add 0 and subtract 0, it will work out to be the same. Okay? It always works out to a nice number, because 0 is a perfect square. And because it works out to a nice number, it means you could have factored this as well. It would be x and x, 1 and 1, minus and minus. And when you factor it, you actually get the same answer twice. X equals 1 and x equals 1. That's why this is sometimes called two equal roots, because you get the same answer twice. But in reality, we like to say this has one root, because there's one answer, even though it happens twice. There's still only one answer to this question. X is equal to 1. And finally, the last bullet, you can put a 3 beside. This is on the next page. No roots. That's whenever the inside of the square root is less than 0, or it is negative inside the square root. I guess we can highlight that here. We can also highlight where it was 0 in the question before. And students really like these ones, because as soon as you get a square root inside your negative, you're done. You don't have to simplify. You just have to say, no answer, I'm done. Don't start making mistakes so they all end up negative inside the square root, though. So because that part inside the square root tells us how much or how many solutions something has, we give it a special name. The special name we give for the b squared minus 4a is called the discriminant. It's not discriminate, discriminant. But it does discriminate about how many solutions you're going to have. So here's the summary. You will have 2 roots whenever it's positive. Greater than 0 means positive. You will have 1 root when it's 0, and no roots when it's less than 0 or when it's negative. So you can use the discriminant to figure out how many answers you're going to get to your question before you even solve it. And sometimes questions in this unit will say, without solving, tell me how many roots there are. So you just need to look at the b squared minus 4ac. All right, we have time for our first question. Oh yeah, maybe even 2. Without solving. So here's this, what I was just saying. We're not supposed to solve this equation, but we're supposed to tell how many roots it has. Will this equation have 1 root, 2 roots, or no roots? So we look at the discriminant. What is b squared minus 4ac equal to? Well, my b value is -6, so I plug that in, -6 squared, minus 4 I'm not solving the equation, I'm solving the discriminant. No, the word solving means you find out what x is. I know. Still feels like I'm writing an equal sign. My a value is 9, and my c value is 1. If I simplify this, I get 36 minus 36, which is equal to 0. What does that mean? There's one root. It also means that you could factor this. And if you could factor it and there's only one root, it means that both factors have to be the same. If they both have to be the same, 3x and x, 1 and 1, minus and minus, that makes factoring a lot quicker. So my one root, if I solved it, would be x equals 1/3. That's solving the equation, coming up that the solution is x equals 1/3. Just looking at the discriminant and finding out that our discriminant is equal to 0, that just tells us there's one root. Okay, questions for practice? 4, 5, 7, and 12.